Great.
Hello everybody and welcome to today's IEP Live Learn Lunch. It's our 118th and we're very excited to be joined by IEP fellow David Imber, who's going to be talking to us about motivation and action planning. Over to you, David.
Helen, thank you very much for your always joyful introduction and such fun and such positivity. Great to see you all. Hello to friends and hello to others as well. I'm going to make you so cross this lunchtime, that you're not going to want to eat your sandwiches. Honestly, I've got some stuff here that makes us think that it's all quite impossible. And it's very much in my style, isn't it, to say what's controversial and to expect everything to go wrong at the first opportunity, and if not, then certainly at the second opportunity. So please open the chat box and get ready to throw brickbats, answer questions, score responses to the questions I'm going to ask later on, while we go on a very short journey through motivation and action planning and ask what could possibly go wrong. Let's have a look at the next slide, Helen. Let's remind ourselves what motivation is. According to Dilbert, it's a management ploy to make you work harder. And keep that in mind, really, because it's in our business, in our profession, we're inclined to think that it's always a good thing. But you've got to be a bit careful who you're talking to. And the next slide, please. And we all love action plans, and some people actually are made to do them, and they get written up in application forms and bids for grants and bids for contracts. They're a really neat way to make it look as if you're getting somewhere, because then at least you can point to a document and a plan, can't you? Whether you're actually getting somewhere depends. So go on. With which rather unremarkable but slightly provocative starting slides, today's messages are twofold. Don't be seduced by acronyms, and especially by smart ones that look really clever and make you think, wow, that's well, smart. And the second message is that if things look complicated, it's not because you haven't understood, it's because they are complicated. So don't worry about it, get stuck into the complications. Yeah. Well, Nigel, you said ITMA. Are you referring to a radio program? I'm trying to remember what it stands for. Yes, do type it in. Let's go to the next slide. Now, everyone knows about SMART action plans, don't they? Yes, we learn about them in high school, and we think, if you're anything like me anyway, when you first saw it, you thought, wow, that's really smart. But the trick is not in the content, the trick is in the acronym. And if somebody had tried to sell that idea as a TRAMS action plan, I don't think it would have got any traction. Oh, there's a word, isn't it? Traction, trams, sorry about that. Trams action plans, like SMART ones, are also time-based, relevant, attainable, measurable, and specific. But you know what? They just don't have the same ring, do they? So let's not be seduced by acronyms. Let's roll out all the acronyms we can think of in the next few minutes and start thinking about what an action plan should contain. TRAMS, SMART, they're fine. I don't have an argument with them. I just don't think they're sufficient. Let's go on to the next one, Helen. Thank you. Now then, what happens if it's, instead of your SMART TRAMS action plan, you go for a risky one? Look at this poor dog. Its owner, who put its picture on the net, was really proud of it and thought it was doing really well. But he obviously hasn't looked in the dog's eyes, which I'd recommend you to do. But if your action plan forces decisions, forces the pace, is driven by your goals, not your client's goals, and doesn't evolve over time, you are risking failure. Now, it can still be a smart plan. Oh, yeah, it's measurable. It's got determined goals. It might even have some challenging targets. Wonderful thought, that, isn't it? But it's risky. Next slide, please, Helen. And if we use risky action plans, we run the risk ourselves of falling for the human cannonball fallacy. Load up your cannonball load up your cannon, I should say, with a client, charge the cannon with an action plan, light the blue touch paper, stand well clear, boom. You think you've shot the client off towards old Moneybags over there, who's our archetypal employer, and oops, you miss. What do you do then? What's happened to the client if you engage with a risky action plan? And why is it that smart or trams isn't really going to cut the mustard? So bear in mind, when you're working with a client and your boss has told you to fill in a smart action plan, you might be falling for the human cannonball fallacy. Let's look at some alternatives, Helen. Less risky action plans, and there's a lot of evidence to support this, takes a lot of finding as well, but it's out there, are chosen because the client wants it, they are confident to do it, and if they're not confident, you can get them the help they need, and they do one thing at a time in a purposeful way. That's simple, isn't it? And you know, if you disagree with what I'm saying, type your message in the chat box, or even if you agree, that would be nice, wouldn't it? Less risky action plans are focused on the desire and confidence of the client. So let's have, before we go on, desire and confidence themselves are more of those weasel words that you can't really interpret because they're so woolly and vague. You know, they help us a bit, but not very much. Now, let's look at some extra words to help choose less risky action plans. The next one. Wow, turns out to be quite a list, doesn't it? Look at that lot. Information. Do they know what they need to know? How are they going to find out? Are they making their own decisions? Or are you making decisions for them? What's out there in the labour market? If there's a sausage factory at one end of the street and a pie factory at the other end of the street, what's it going to be? Sausages or pies? What options are there? Can the client adjust? You know, there might be an outgoing person who'd ideally be a salesperson selling brushes door to door, but actually if it's only the pie factory there, well, it's going to have to be the pie factory, isn't it? But they might have to change. They might have to do different tasks at work, and that might take effort, time, and commitment, and they'd end up in an environment where it might suit them, they might hate it. There is so much to think about in an action plan that actually using acronyms is a quick route to not quite getting it right. Helen, let's see the next one. Great. So when it comes to acronyms, my message for the first part of this seminar is, you think up a nice word. I chose effective. I picked it absolutely out of the blue and I thought, right, I'm going to make an acronym for effective action plans. You do it after the seminar. Do it now if you're bored. Pick any word you like and make an acronym that describes the action plan of your choice. Mine was that it's essential because it doesn't work if you haven't got it. It's fuzzy because action plans are never quite as firm as we'd like them to be. It's focused on work and not on taking the dog to the vet because the dog's just ate a chocolate cake. It's enjoyable because you get to stay at home and do your action plan instead of going to the vet. It's comprehensive, covers all the bases. Might be comprehensive, it's also a bit tentative because we don't know how things are going to turn out until we've tried them. It's informative because your client actually gets to work out for themselves how to use the information that's out there. They do it because they want to, and they do it because it's easy. Now, my way of thinking, that's a pretty good acronym for an effective action plan. I could argue for any one of those things, but remember, the acronym is entirely random. It's just so much alphabet soup. Comments in the chat box, please chuck them in there. I'd be really interested to hear what you think. And while you're typing those, I want to mention that the risk that we run for our own professionalism about acronyms and working things by rote and just kind of going along our own tram lines is that we lose sight of just how complicated people are, how human they are, and how the world out there is messy and difficult and not exactly the way we'd like it. Nigel, I'm offering you the effective action plan free of charge for use in perpetuity. Since you say you're going to steal it, I might as well give in now. Thank you. So that's my take on action planning. I haven't asked a lot of questions, so you better get your fingers on buzzers, teams, because we're going to ask you lots of questions now, Helen, with the next slide on motivation. Right. Motivation, what is it? Type your definition in the box, please. Because I don't know anyone who knows what it is. Lots of people say they do.
So while we're waiting for people to have an opportunity to do that, we've got an interesting comment from Deborah who says, I don't do action plans. They assume that those we deal with live life in a linear manner, and that truly is not the way of it. I move forward, I move in a forward motion to look at what next and then do it, ignoring the admin.
Yeah, I really like that. Somebody once told me I should have a business plan. And I said, look, when I want to climb the top of the mountain, I just go uphill. If I meet a rock, I go around it.
There you go. So we've got some answers coming in for you now. So Sue says motivation. Oh, and they're coming in thick and fast. So it's very fast for me. I will go back to that one. Miriam says interest and desire plus discipline. Roger says from within, not driven by carrots. Lisa says the innate energy to desire to move towards something. Nigel says engage in the task rather than stand on it. That's an interesting one. And Kevin says be it feeling driven to do something even when it's something you don't particularly enjoy. So I'm going to try and go back to those other ones as well in a minute.
Tracy, I'll read out while you're going back, is saying motivation makes you act in a way that helps you get closer to your goals. Great. So there's something coming out here, isn't there, about it's internal, it's against some kind of personal or objective resistance. It's about goals, it's about enjoyment, it's actually, psychologically speaking, it's pretty complicated. Did you find one, Helen?
Yes, I did. So Sue said a motivation is a reason to do something. And Jenny said having positive energy towards something. So those are quite interesting like ones as well. I like the positive energy towards something. I like that idea.
All right. Okay.
I'm not sure if that's how I feel when I'm looking around to Scrabble to get the motivation to go for a run. I'm not sure if I would describe that process as the positive energy towards something, but more acceptance that it needs to happen.
Yeah. Let's look at the next one. I feel the same when I'm going out for a bike ride. Oh, my favorite little hamster. How about if we put some words down for motivation, that it's about wanting to do something, about belief in its worth or that you can do it, opportunities that you've got, Maybe it's necessity. I mean, if you're motivated by necessity, boy, it can be really important, can't it? You know, I've got to keep riding my bike because if I stop pedaling, I'll fall over. Ability, fortunately, I'm usually able to keep pedaling. Opportunities out there. So again, the sausage factory and the pie factory. I'm motivated to go to the pie factory. Why? Because I want to be in quality control where I get to eat pies all day. It's an opportunity there. Choices, risks. Risks. Suppose I'm motivated to go to work, but I think that if I do, I might get one of those jobs where you're back on the dole again in a few weeks' time or a few months or something like that. My motivation is suddenly ambiguous. So there's lots of stuff in there, in motivation, that looks, as we said at the beginning, complicated. Shannon, the COM-B model is a great one. Yeah. I like that model very much. Maybe I've made that list because somewhere in my head I've got a faint memory of reading about the COM-B model. Next slide, please. Over to you. Get your fingers on the number key on your number pad on your keyboard and answer this question between 0 and 10. Can you change motivation? Or rather, how do you best change? 7, 9.
7, 9, 10.
Wow.
8.
We have got some optimists in
7,
there.
8. 6, 8. I'm not going to try and read all the names at the same time. It's too. They go past too fast, don't they? Yeah.
So we're getting on the more positive side of people are adaptable, but it's hard to do, towards yes, you can change by showing benefits and managing pressures and providing experiences, which I guess is where we all feel as advisors or managers. Yeah, you can change motivation, and it's very much about the influences and the relationship. Next slide, please. 2 questions. The first one, question A, which is most effective in changing motivation towards work? At one extreme, great wages, loads of dosh. At the other extreme, out of work poverty.
An interesting one. Nobody's answered it yet, David.
Yeah.
They're thinking about it. So we've got a 4 here, a 4 and an 8. So different, sort of different there. Yeah. Different. 8, 7. Yeah, I think this one's tougher for people. 6, 8. Nigel's gone with A7 and B2, so he's gone for both questions at the same time. Deborah's gone 5, 5. So yeah, real differences here. On the last one, we didn't see that much difference, did we?
No, it's all that one.
Doesn't it depend? Shannon said, doesn't it depend on the job? Some people won't be better off in low-paid jobs.
Quite right. Now, imagine you're a politician and you're in charge of works and pensions, and you've been asked to reduce the tax burden of the works and pensions department. How would you answer the same question?
It's tricky, isn't it?
Isn't it? Because the practical effect of taxation policy shows that politicians, by and large, believe in something between 0 and 4, whereas we believe in something between 5, roughly, and 10.
Interesting, isn't it? And the reason I laughed was because Deborah came back immediately with carefully when you said, how would you answer that question?
Tread carefully and don't admit to anything. Look at question B now. It's a very different kind of question. It's not really a very well phrased one, but where would you direct your activity with a client to change their motivation, to help motivate them towards work? Do you do it by, at the 0 end, exploring choices, providing information, pretty much leaving it up to them to work it out? Or at the 8, 9, 10 end, expecting action from them and monitoring their activities? Now, I know it's not a fair question because everyone's going to say, well, all of the above.
Okay, so this time we've got 0s, 3s, 2s, a lot more clarity, a lot more consensus, not clarity, a lot more consensus in the answer coming through this time. So we've had a 4. We've had Shannon says first offering choices, then moving into action. So a split.
Yeah, that's probably pretty much what we all think, I imagine, Shannon. Yeah. But of course, what your administrative systems do is monitor at 7, 8, 9, 10, don't they? Or 7, is it? Does it only go up to 9? I can't see it. I've got 7, 8, 9. Yeah. So you get monitored at the right-hand end of this scale, but actually you have to start off on the 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay. And Deborah's put an interesting comment here. Change motivation, or for the first time explain why being motivated can make their lives better.
Yeah. So this is, it's an unfair question because the answer is all of the above, isn't it? You have to do all of this, and you have to do it in a very humane, thoughtful and personalized process. Do we get the feeling we're moving towards action plans here? Anyone?
Jenny says it's helpful to give information and explore choices, effect on the person, and then help to monitor progress and support an exploration as to why the person may not have progressed.
And I couldn't agree more. It is a very nice way of putting it, Jenny. And actually, that sounds like what you do when you've got a really lively, worthwhile cooperative action plan, doesn't it? It's not just SMART. It's not any acronym. It's a very personal development. Let's look at the next slide. Oh, Shannon again.
So Shannon has said that, I've accidentally gone on to the next slide.
Yes,
sorry. Shannon said, but that's abstract, I feel. Being motivated, isn't it better to get to know what that change in life or money will actually mean to the person?
Yeah.
And Nigel has said, find the common enemy to build confidence and join the track.
Yeah, okay. Common enemy. That's an interesting notion. I'd like to hear more about that. And right at the end, we're going to offer you a chance to join the most informal email conversation about all this and other things that you've ever heard of. Let's go on now, Helen. Thank you for all those comments. It's really great. So here's a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, B, C, D, F, G, H, things that might change motivation. You've got to really think fast here. So I'm going to ask you to start putting down the one of these which you think is most motivating, or if you're really smart, sorry about that word, if you're really quick, you can start putting them in order of positive impact on motivation. Roger knows me too well. He's put B in as the first one. Quite right, B. Yeah. Great. Sue also B. Any more for the G? Caring and trusting. See, well, what if you did B and G together? Wouldn't that be great? C. Exploring choices. Successful activity. Nigel and Jenny are including challenging wrong ideas.
Deborah says A to H. Do you do what you think will help? So there's lots coming through, isn't there? Joyce said GCB. Tracy said BCG. It wasn't BCG, but it used to be an inoculation called the BCG, didn't I? Yeah, I'm showing my age now. I shouldn't have said that out loud, should I?
They were new when I was roaming the land with dinosaurs. Somebody mentioned compulsion a little higher up the list. I've lost it, but
okay. So
Deborah.
Yeah. Deborah said A to H. Do what you think will help. Eamon has said BCFG. Lots and lots coming through. But did you want to talk about compulsion there, David?
Noisy motorcycle outside. Say that again, Helen.
Did you want to talk a little bit more about compulsion?
Well, I wonder about compulsion because I suppose we're going to come on to the effect of sanctions later on. And I'm a bit obsessed about the effect of sanctions. So there might be other ways you compel people, but I'm not sure. Is poverty a form of compulsion?
Well, interestingly, Miriam has said most people are motivated more by the avoidance of pain than the gains. She agrees with Nigel. Understanding pain points informs reasons behind motivation or demotivation, which really ties into what you were just saying there, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it?
Mm.
Yeah, and I think Miriam's quite right that people count pain or loss much more than they count gains, even when they're actually exactly the same thing, just expressed differently. Do sanctions motivate? What does anyone else think? Do sanctions motivate? Demotivate.
Yeah, and Shannon said only through fear, Jenny, and it's really not where we want people to be, do we? You know, interestingly, you mentioned my dogs, my naughty dogs who get themselves into pickles all the time, and you know, we use positive training with them, and it's really interesting here. We're looking about the sort of old style dog training, the punitive dog training. It only works when you're present, you know, it only works when you're there. And so they don't do it anymore. And it's the same concept, isn't it? If you motivate through fear, it will only work when that fear is present, when you're there to enforce it.
Okay. That's very interesting. I've only got one thing to say to that, Helen, and that's woof woof. Let's have the next slide. Thank you all for really joining in with that slide. I was a bit nervous because there's a lot of stuff in there, but great that you're joining in and expressing your views. It's so important.
Yeah, Deborah and Nigel have both said very similar things here, that, you know, they've witnessed them really destroy the motivation that existed. And then demoralize and create far more destructive issues and barriers for the individuals in the first place. So not great. Oh,
that's it. That's the right one.
Yeah, what you want to be.
Yeah. Demotivation. So, you know, you work hard, but your investment can go down. So here's the same question again, only this time we're turning it around. Which of these A to G are the worst for motivation? So if you thought sanctions is the worst of all, put G, and then whatever you think is next.
I'm sure these will come through. I mean, my gut feeling looking at this for me would be F, but then I'm reading the others and I'm thinking there's others there, but you know, there's nothing that gets my hackles up more than someone when I feel like I'm being patronized.
Yeah, which must be a bit similar to Lisa's D.
Yeah, we've got they're coming through thick and fast now. Sue has said D, Miriam has said G, D, P, B, Nigel.
B, but never mind.
Yeah, I think they're just doing it to torment me now, David. Lots of them, and he's thrown some in there like you that's not there, and I think they're just trying to keep me on my toes, this group. So we've got we've got a big spread. So Pat has said G and F. Sanctions and patronising. Tracy has said failure and being patronised. Jenny has said failure, finger wagging, and sanctions. So there's lots of variation there. Again, it's obviously very personal for different people. Some people won't mind psychobabble and it will go over their heads. For other people, it could be really annoying, can't it?
I noticed there are lots of B's, the failure one in there, and that's also very strongly supported by evidence. And that combination that Tracy has put up, B and F, failure and patronising, with a bit of D, finger wagging, perfectly describes my experience in primary school. Maybe why I'm constantly trying to annoy people these days, getting my own back.
So Nigel said the biggest complaints he gets about the JCP is F.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, is the feeling of being patronised. Yeah.
So that's a really interesting group of responses. Thank you. Oh, Deborah, what's this?
So she said, mine would be F, but I come at this from a different viewpoint of the world. Many believe E, which is psychobabble, not knowing better. D, finger wagging, thinking this is normal behaviour for someone in Job Centre Plus. And C, unusable information, assumes you know what you don't know. So looking at it from other people's points of view in the feedback that she's getting back there. And it is interesting, isn't it?
And I think, Deborah, I'm agreeing with what you say there, but really crucially, what you seem to be doing is working out how these different things react with clients and with the advisor and interact amongst themselves. So you can get into mindsets where groups of these things get applied, or you fight against them. And people mentioning JCP are perhaps reflecting the fact that a highly bureaucratized environment is inclined to adopt demotivating behaviors because it suits the management of a bureaucracy. It's easier to do than the motivating behaviors.
Yeah, I think that's really, really interesting.
Isn't it?
Jenny said we need to try and understand the person. Yeah, definitely. So
yeah, now we're going to have lots of time to discuss at the end of this because we've been galloping through at a fair old pace. So don't feel, if you've got something to say, don't feel that we're going to run out of time in a, at the last minute. Do get it down there at any time. I'm going to let you just read this. I hate reading stuff out, so you just read this.
that's interesting.
So welfare conditionality, in some ways, is a euphemism for compulsion, isn't it? Because the penalty for non-compliance is poverty. And my gentleman in the tie and suit with a whip clearly believes that applying the whip is the way forward. And yet the Welfare Conditionality Project, funded by the UK's biggest research council that is supported by government, finds that the use of the whip or poverty or even uncertainty is counterproductive in very serious ways. Now, no surprises there, says Jenny. I think it makes it really difficult for me. In a way, this is a personal journey of mine rather than a well worked out seminar, because I've been in employability all my working life, pretty much. And it's been like this slide pretty much all the time. And our profession, as I think our comments today in the chat box are showing, our profession tries to work against a system that is fundamentally demotivating. And I find that deeply uncomfortable at best and distressing at worst. I think it's just so difficult. We could do so much better. But that was my confession for the morning. Always good to have a confession during the morning. Don't do them in the afternoons because they spoil the drink in the evening. Do them in the mornings before lunch if you're going to confess. What do people think? Put your thoughts in the box. Jenny says no surprises.
Deborah says, conditionality assumes that the staircase of moving into work, doing better, has all the treads in place. poor schools, poor college, no qualifications, then you already have a number of treads missing. Most of those pushing policy have no idea of the realities of the world other than their communities, their networks, and this blinkered approach seems to be worse now than ever before. I think they should read Dickens. So
completely agree, especially about Dickens. If you haven't read Dickens on poverty, you haven't lived.
And Nigel says this is in many ways touches on the position and the use of welfare funding. What are we going to do to reduce the overall cost? Are we funding to become earners or providing a muddy landing?
Very muddy landing, quite often, I suspect.
And of course, you've also shared, and also not only should people be reading Dickens, they should read Down and Out in Paris and London. I haven't read that, so I may have to.
It's a really nice read.
One in there that one of the ones that I actually look at quite often around adverse childhood experiences, and how they account for a lot of adult issues. She's also said Maslow's hierarchy should come into helping people more, she feels. Sue has said we need to try and break the family cycle of reliance on benefits, need to inspire children to achieve more from an early age.
Okay, I agree with that. I agree with that, Sue, and I have to ask how.
It's an interesting one, that word inspire in there, David. I'm glad we've seen that, because the thing is, motivation, and I think we talked about it earlier, motivation is internal. You can inspire someone else, but motivation you can be inspired by someone else, but motivation has to come from within in order to stick. Nigel said taught apathy of the experience in early life is very difficult to break.
Yeah.
I think we might have to share this list of books we're talking about.
I think so.
Obviously, The Ragged Trousered Philanthropist, I have read that one because it's been recommended to me before. But Deborah's put, I'd really recommend Maud Pember Reeves' study on poverty in Lambeth, London, called Round About £1 a Week. So there's another recommendation for you all.
I need to copy that and read that.
I will forward it on to you, David. Have no
Super.
fear. I have all the chat saved at the end. And for anyone else who wants these recommendations, pop me an email and I'll send the list out of everything we've discussed. Jenny has said, we work with the parents to get them into work, to try and inspire their children that work is possible.
Yeah.
It's one of the ways of inspiring children. Mariam has said, she finds most programs are set up under the assumption that people will be reasonable or respond in a certain way. When that doesn't happen, frustration is bound to set in. Sadly, sanctions may then appear as the fastest way forward, which they aren't. It's the opposite, in fact.
Yeah. So within our nice cozy group here, I think we've got a common interest and a common view about demotivation and sanctions. So in my confession earlier on, I said that I hold this as a pretty deep worry. But go on to the next slide while we also hear from Deborah again.
Okay, so she said, Jenny, I agree. I have a mum on the Read Easy scheme, and she is now taking her children to the literacy sessions. So generations are benefiting. What a lovely.
That's really nice, Deborah. Now then, suppose I gave you a pill. You could give it to your client, and it was guaranteed to make the clients want to work and happy about it. So it's a bit like you go to the doctor and you get one of these and you go, yeah, I really want to go to work. Fine. Here's your question. Would you give it to them?
Oh, 4s and 0s so far. While people are answering, we've got 3s now. Nope. We've got some nopes, some 0s, 3s and 2s. I think when you are medicating, you're just masking you're dealing with the symptoms. You're just masking them, aren't you? You're not dealing with the problems. Everyone's saying 2s and 3s. There's too many for me to read.
Yeah, 2s, 3s, 1s.
Yeah.
Well, here's the bad news. You are giving that pill. What you do is try to motivate people. So go on to the next slide and let's ask another question. Back to action planning. If your action plan is to be motivational, there's a string of magic questions, but the one I want to focus on is this one. On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you to do, mention the action in question? That question identifies what the client has confidence to do, and their degree of confidence is predictive of both effort and success. It's not guaranteed, of course it's not, nothing is guaranteed, but it is more predictive than, I don't know what, educational attainment, than literacy, numeracy, whatever. So if someone says, oh, I'm a 2 out of 10, you're pretty sure they won't want to do a certain thing, won't try it, and if they do try it, are less likely to succeed. So when we're building action plans, we need to ask that question several times. We have to take the problem, whatever it is, and cut it into tiny, thin slices. And remember that they have to be eaten in the right order, one at a time.
Excellent. So we've got some comments there, but Sally's responded to my comment and I really like it because she said sometimes treating the symptoms removes the distractions and enables you to deal with the cause, which is great if you can do that, isn't it? Having that freedom to really look at the cause. So I agree with you there, Sally. Yeah, so it's really, really interesting point there. Jenny said she likes this question and does use it, and says the question she uses is what could get you to the next number up.
Yeah, well, great approaches. And yeah, for those of you like me who like to sit and read stuff, I've got 1, 2, 4 references that you can follow up, which talk about the sort of background to this. But those references don't tell you how to do it. This is a human interaction, and you good people who are here today will be expert in this.
Excellent.
Let's look at the next question, because that's a start. So having got the answer, focused on work, how confident are you? High confident, it goes in the plan. How smart is that? Low confidence, you get help or you leave it out. And then comes the killer question, how confident are you to use the help we offer? That's really vital, because all too often the help we offer is help that is too difficult for the client. And that actually damages their confidence. So we're going to have to do this and do it and do it until we reach the end of that Hungarian salami. And it takes,
I think that's a really interesting
and
point,
it has many surprises along the way.
I think you're right. You know, it's that balance of support and challenge, isn't it? Constantly with participants and making sure that it's in the right place. So we're helping and not damaging confidence. We've all had that instance where something's happened that's knocked our confidence. I remember the first time I've been a school leaver, going to job interviews, getting offered a couple of jobs and feeling really confident. And then all of a sudden went to an interview and just didn't get on. And it really, I went from being super confident about interviews to being, oh, you know, and it really did knock my confidence.
Yeah, it does. It does. So that's about pretty much everything I know about motivation and action planning. I can talk for the county on the subject. It doesn't mean I'm any better at it or any worse at it than anyone else, probably worse actually. So let's move to the next slide. Now, here we go. The same welfare conditionality project report, 2018, so quite new really by the standards of these things. have a read of that. It's not a happy sentence.
It isn't, is it?
It's not a happy sentence at all for a social researcher to come up with. Ouch. And you know, that's, it's not the very best seminar, because the very best seminars leave you feeling inspired and optimistic. But I did say we'd put a damper on optimism at the beginning, so it's honest, if not excellent. The problem we face as a profession is, how do we get more effective, improve quality, and be more personal and less generic? We know that it can work because there's lots of evidence about what works. But the way it's being done, and I'm not blaming anyone here or all of us here or me or you or anyone, but the way it happens in the UK is, it seems, often of poor quality and largely ineffective. And if you look at the age and duration of unemployment statistics, you come to pretty similar conclusions. So how well are we doing? That's my big question. Helen knows me well. It drives me. And I think it should drive all of us, really. How well are we doing? Comments in the box now, and towards the end of our hour, we've got 10 minutes for discussion, but let's have the next slide, please, Helen. So, what do you think? Let's hear from Deborah while you read your slide.
Okay, so Deborah says, argue that this is mirrored by the advice given on careers and the way it is delivered too. We need to accredit prior learning, assess delivery, and not focus on a qualification. Too many of us share a job title and yet do not have the experience, expertise, or just time on the ground to help others well and at the pace they need to move on.
Caseloads, experience, expertise, developing human relationships.
Definitely. Nigel has said, this reminds me of a young man who just applied to the first 20 jobs that came up on Indeed each week. And it was only noticed that he had an application for a Santa job in Peterborough whilst having no transport and living in Beverley. I don't know how far Peterborough and Beverley are, but that is quite funny, isn't it?
Santa jobs are notoriously temporary too, aren't they? Yes.
Well, yeah, and unfortunately so. And Jenny says, I worked with young people for the career service and then connections. It fell apart once the government brought in much tighter outcomes, and it was so time limited that we couldn't spend the time with the client that was needed. I see this now. I work with adults. Okay, and Shannon, could we have that link to the community in the chat, please? Yep, we can sort that. We can get that sorted. We can get that sent out to everyone. Yeah. And Nigel has said more than 3 hours drive. So yeah, that's going to be a bit of a push then, isn't it? Definitely. Deborah says Santa and gas mantle fitters.
I tell you what, I'm going to have a small bet, drink of your choice, if I am not the only person in this chat who has got gas mantles in his house.
I don't know what, I'm just thinking what they are. Would they be the old settings? They're
the old kind of little white thing made of a sort of white sort of net material that you put a match to on your gas lamp.
Yes, there you go then.
Yeah.
He did until he was 18. There you go.
You go.
And that link is there now. Yeah, Jenny says I have those for an oil lamp. So there you go. Jenny, a drink of her choice, no less.
Absolutely, Jenny, I'm up for that. And Jenny, my grandfather made oil lamps for a living. This discussion group, I'll tell you its background. After one of our seminars, Miriam kindly wrote an email with some questions, and we've been communicating on and off by email and challenging each other and talking about the profession generally. And I had word with Helen about it, and I thought, should we make this a formal IEP thing? But in the end, came to the conclusion, why don't we just have a really simple group of people, don't have to join, don't have to leave, don't have to write unless you want to. We just bung around emails with our thoughts and our ideas and our questions as and when we feel like it. But Miriam, thank you so much, has put together the simplest form in the known universe. And if you fill it in, I do believe she and I will get your email address and we'll send you copies of our recent correspondence, and we can go on with this discussion, or you can start a new one, and anyone can talk to anyone without any commitment. What do you think? And if it really takes off, we'll brand it with the IEP and let you have it. How about that, Helen?
That's absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. I would like a copy. I think I will join in as well. Shame on me for not joining in yet. So Deborah has said, I just fed into the APPG on careers, that careers education should start at day one in education. Bring the curriculum to life, get teachers back into industry, and they accepted the evidence for review. I'd like to think that if we keep nagging that delivery will one day not divorce what it is from what is being delivered at the front of a classroom and from day one. Role models are so essential. If you don't already work with your local schools and there's a chance, give it a go. I think that's key, isn't it? Yeah.
Deborah, it's really great to hear about the careers services and connections and so forth, along with our perhaps more kind of government contract-led employability work. Thank you. It's really good. Yeah. So, any more thoughts? Any more thoughts? I think, Helen, I'm guilty of being far too self-indulgent in my seminars sometimes.
No, you're not. Everybody loves your seminars, and we always have a great time. And I think, it's key, isn't it, that people want to come along and chat and talk about things, and that's what comes through. And you've given me a lead into something that we're going to be starting in the new year, and there will be more information coming out, where in the new year we will start to have one live learn lunch a month, where we invite fellows like yourself to come along and just, rather than having a seminar approach, actually talk about issues that are relevant to our members and what's happening, and give people an opportunity to ask these questions. We'll unmute people, we'll let people switch their cameras on if they want. And Jenny's saying she's loved the discussion and she likes the more informal approach, and that's exactly what we want to go with. I always look forward to these sessions for that very same reason, Jenny. Miriam has said, my correspondence with David has been really enriching, and I've learned a lot, challenging, interesting and fun even. So yes, let's get everyone through. And it's great. I can see people are saying, yep, they're looking forward to those sessions as well. So what we're doing at the moment is putting together a schedule. Obviously, the fellows can be quite busy, but we will have 3 or 4 fellows at each session. We will have a theme that we will publish and you will know. But what I would say to everyone is, if there are topics you would like the fellows to discuss and conversations you would like to have, let us know, because, we can make that happen. So let's make sure the issues that are relevant to you on the front line of employability practice are the ones that we're put into that discussion. That's really strange. I've just completely lost my chat off my screen there, so I'm going to have to turn to another screen. So apologies for looking away. I'm going to turn my camera off to allow me to do that. Sorry about that, guys. Some more comments on there. Nigella says, having had a life before becoming a teacher, did help me to bring the working world into the classroom. However, the pressure on school for performance tables erodes the enrichment in favour of the academic. That's an interesting point, isn't it, David?
And very interesting. I think that the standard for careers advice in school really has no standards contained in it. There are no measures there of what constitutes good advice, but there's lots of exaltation and fine words and adjectives. And I think the amount of advice school children get, I'm no expert, I'm here to be corrected, the amount of advice children get, good or bad or indifferent, is not enough, I would guess.
Yep. Sue has said, I am very new to employability, but having spent the past 20 years in education, there needs to be more alignment with work on careers and adult life, etc. I'm remembering back to the careers advice I had at school. Obviously, I'm older, but it wasn't great. It wasn't great what I had at school. I can't remember virtually anything about it, but it really didn't stand out, and I didn't come out of it with any clarity on what I wanted to do.
Me too, and how.
But I'm sure there are lots of people that have had wonderful interventions and experiences. Right, I'm just looking at the time. Oh, I never normally let us click over onto 1 o'clock. You see, David, you come in and you cause all sorts of trouble. It's always been my rule that I never go past 1 o'clock.
A special thanks, Helen, to you. A special thanks, because you make these things run so smoothly and so well. But also an enormous thank you to everyone who's taken time out of their lunch. Goodness me, what a prize that is. Time out to come and join us and joined in so actively. It really makes my day, my week even. So great to talk to you more soon.
Well, I'm going to just read these last couple of comments have come through, and then I'm going to tell everyone about next week's. Don't leave yet, because I do want to talk to you all about next week's sessions. Nigel has said the only thing he can remember about his was talk about paper keys. I will leave that there for us all to think about for the next week as to what that may have been. And Jenny has put that it is nowhere near enough. As someone else said, it should run throughout school. We were expected to go into school, do a half-an-hour session and have motivated the young person that they then knew what their future path was. Ridiculous. I think that's what happened with me, Jenny, and it just didn't do anything for me. And Deborah said, used to be a manager in an EBP. We brought the real world into the classroom, and my team placed over 3,500 into work experience each year. I wish I'd had that experience, Deborah. Sadly, government cut the funding, but it's sorely missed. And just for share the acronym, she's put educational business partnership. Thank you for that. So yeah, that's that wonderful as ever. We've broken one of my rules, but what a pleasure to do that. And I know that you guys will enjoy it. So there's some links coming through there as well. For those of you who have been able to stay with us, because I know it's lunchtime, I just wanted to, I echo all the points David said. You know how grateful I am that you guys come to these sessions. Next week's session is from Career Map, and the title of the session is The Plan for Jobs and Employment Support. And it's going to be a really interactive session, and we want people to come and give us their feedback and their thoughts. So come and join our discussion about the effectiveness of the government's Plan for Jobs and Employment Support. In this interactive session, we will find out what your views and experiences are through polls and conversations on chat. And it's really going to be lively. And what Sharon, another fellow of the IEP, is going to be doing is bringing that feedback and that evaluation and our thoughts together and feeding that back where it needs to be fed back. So please, 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 if you can, come along and share your thoughts. We want them warts and all. We want what you think's great and what you think not so much, to try and put a more, what you actually think, and let's give that feedback. So we're encouraging as many fellows as possible to attend, but we also want practitioners. We want people from all different areas of the sector to come and have their say, so we can feed that back. So if you can, we would really appreciate, and we would love to have you there. So with no further ado, I am aware of the time. Thank you, David. As always, it's amazing when you're here. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and thank you for keeping me busy and bearing with me when my computer is still doing weird things. Hopefully it's still all there, and I will see you all next week. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week.
Thank you, everybody. Great to see you.